Okay, so welcome to another edition of Yarning It Up for Queensland Mental Health Week, brought to you by the SIMNI, our Soroptimist International Moreton North Club. My name's Fiona. I'm a relatively new member to the club, although I'm almost coming up to my 1-year anniversary, and wow, hasn't the first year absolutely flown. It's my absolute privilege this evening to have a conversation with Trish Jenkins, who has been a SIMNI member for many years. And she's got a really interesting story that I'm so excited to share with you all. So Trish, I guess the easiest way is to just jump straight in and I guess tell us a little bit about your story and your journey, because you've had some fairly unique experiences that not a lot of people would expect. And I think it was from those experiences that you've really developed some really strong strategies around how to bolster your own personal mental health, and also, I guess, to help others to improve their mental health in particularly trying situations. So welcome, Trish.
Oh, thank you, Fiona. Yes, lucky me. But, you know, everybody gets their own story and their own journey. So as I share mine, if there are things in there that help other people, then that makes the sharing of it worthwhile. So, Fiona, my husband and I were doing fairly well. We had bought property. We were looking for cash flow opportunities, and I started working for a fellow who ran a managed fund. What I didn't know was that he was actually a crook, and he was stealing investors' money in what's known as a Ponzi scheme. And if you don't know what that is, that's where you think you've got an investment and the money coming back to you is the profit that you're making. But in fact, the person is giving you a little bit of your own money back while they pocket the rest. And it needs more and more investors to sustain it, but eventually it implodes. And that's what happened with this one. I didn't know that he was stealing investors' money, and my role was to make sure they kept getting paid each month. And suddenly I couldn't pay them. And so I spent a number of months telling them what he was telling me about the market, that it wasn't guaranteed and that we weren't getting paid. I had 104,000 in it myself. That was apart from our properties. So had he legitimately traded and lost that money, that would have been annoying, it would have been upsetting, but we could have worn it. But he stole it, and along with everybody else's. And I didn't know it was stolen, but I was the contact person that people were coming to and saying, are we going to get paid this month? Where's my money? Where's my money? And it got quite distressing, and they were people were emailing, phoning, turning up at my home, asking, begging, demanding money. And I didn't know how to deal with that. I thought to myself, I've got to fix this. I have to do something. And my resilience ran out because I wasn't trained in how to deal with that sort of thing. And I said to him, look, there's some money over here. Can I use this to pay people because they're desperate? He said, all right, do that. He didn't care. So I did. And that money was not for them. It was for another purpose. And so what I did was effectively a breach of the Corporations Act. Now, that happened in 2005. Shortly after that, somebody complained to the authorities about his activities, and I was invited for an interview. And I sat there with the authorities and I said, well, this is what the investment's about. This is what I've done recently to try and bring some relief. You know, tell me what to do next. You know, tell me what I should do. And they just said, you did what? And I went, oh, you know, because I could have replaced that money. But I wasn't allowed to. Very shortly after, we were advised to go into voluntary liquidation, which, if you have anything to do with liquidation, means basically liquidators take over your accounts. They pay themselves their hourly rate until there's nothing left, and then they send you on your way or refer it back to the authorities. So we lost everything in that. Everything was sold up. And then that took a couple of years, and then I was prosecuted. So I was dealing with the mental distress of losing our home, losing our income, going back to work, finding work in order to keep food on the table. We're renting, nothing wrong with renting, but it was like death of 1,000 cuts. It's like, oh, it can't get any worse than this. And then it does. It can't get any worse than this. And then it does. So I was dealing with that. And then, yes, I was prosecuted, which was a whole other realm of new lawyers. And that lasted another 1.5 years of lawyers toing and froing, because I never denied what I did. I did what I did. I didn't steal any money, but I just didn't realise just how serious what I did was at the time. And finally, in January 2009, and if anybody remembers 2008, that was the global financial crisis.
Yeah, it was a really significant time for financial challenges.
Yeah, and January 2009 is a great time to get in front of a judge for doing something wrong financially.
Yeah.
So I could have got a fine, but I got the maximum. And that was a head sentence of 2.5 years. But because I pled guilty, because I was, it was reduced to 8 months. And so I left the court. It went over 2 days, and I went to the Roma Street Watch House and then on to prison. That was in January 2009, and I came home in September. So I was away from my husband and our 3 little girls, who were Chelsea was 10, and we have identical twin girls who were 7 at the time. So they missed out on their mummy for the best part of a year. Yeah, so that's in a nutshell. That's how that went. So really, there were 3 phases to what I went through. There was the losses, and then there was the incarceration period, which was a different toll on my mental health, and I did learn some strategies for coping there. And then there's the coming out of it, which is over the last 10 years, where I've learned some really powerful tools to lift up again, to be resilient. And in fact, Soroptimist was part of that. Becoming a Soroptimist and serving other people, and the support that I got from that encouraged me to publish my book. And well, I was in the process of publishing it, but to have the confidence to promote it and get out there and actually share my story, which was a really frightening thing to do because I didn't know how people were going to react.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple of things that I want to drill in on there. So one of them is that the role that Soroptimist played and how that even came about, because I believe it was in prison that you were actually visited by some volunteers that were part of the Soroptimist Club. So tell us a little bit about that, and then I guess how you became connected to Soroptimist.
Sure. Well, actually, the timing couldn't have been better, because I coped fairly well, I thought, in prison for the most part, and then I was moved to a facility that was actually the minimum security area, which I coped less well with, and I guess it was at about the midway point, perhaps a bit later than midway, about midway, and it really got dark for me, and I really began to despair. I actually coped better with the roughies in the maximum part because they're kind of upfront, they are what they are. Yep. And the minimum security ladies, some of them are okay, but they tend to be a better, I don't like to use the phrase better class of criminal, but they're a bit more, they're not so much openly aggressive as more backstabby and sneaky if they don't like you. And okay, people ask me what was prison like. If you can remember about the 9th grade at high school, when girls are at their worst.
Yeah, and emotional warfare is the weapon of choice.
That's what it's like.
Yeah, right.
So it's, you can't be her friend if you're my friend, and just the backstep, and even today I'm less tolerant of that than I am the openly aggressive. I just find that hard, because I'm a natural, believe it or not, I'm a naturally trusting person. I'd rather be open and upfront. having said that, I was at a particular era of despair while I was there. It was pretty hard. And these two ladies turned up, because we get these volunteers in from time to time to do craft and other, you know, do-gooding type of stuff to make us feel like, you know, we're not so wretched. Yeah, we're not the scum of the earth. Throw us a few bones. And well-intentioned, but it was Tony Baker and another lady called Lilius, and they came in. Tony had a Beauty Within program, she called it, and I think Lilius did some relaxation exercises, but Tony had these skincare, hand cream and a hand scrub, and we sat around a table with a bowl of water and a towel, and we did the thing that women do when they're sampling products and stuff, and, you know, rinse the hands and the smell. And I was reminded that I was a woman. I wasn't just prisoner D42586. I was a woman and I had value, and that these were the kind of women that I had been, but I still was. I was just having this journey. And it just reminded me of my human dignity. And when I came home, I mean, who remembers the name Soroptimist? I mean,
yeah, it's an unusual. Anytime you say it to someone, they're like, "A what?
I know. I have to explain it. Soros meaning sister, and optimist meaning best. So best for women. And I happen to remember that, and I rarely remember names. I'm a bit ignorant like that. But I remembered her name, Tony Baker. It was in my head, and I went, right. It was a number of weeks after I'd come home, and so I looked it up on the internet, and I phoned the nearest club and very hesitatingly said, "Oh, look, would you happen to know these ladies?" And she said, "Oh, yes. And I said, "Oh, look, I just wonder if you wouldn't mind passing on my thanks and just let them know that I'm okay, I'm home and I'm okay, and I just wanted to say thank you." And I was invited to a function, which was for International Women's Day, and I hadn't even heard of International Women's Day at the time.
Yeah.
So I went along, and I was made to feel welcome. I was handed some things to put out on the tables. Could I help them out? Sure, I can. And I was made to feel part of it, and that did more for me than any charity would. I didn't want to be a charity case. I wanted to be accepted and have my dignity restored and to be normal. And very often, you can be a victim of something, but you can choose to remain in that victimhood, or you can choose to find another way and to look above the pain if you can. You just need help. You can't do it on your own. And I found that the women in that club got around me and encouraged me and said that I had valuable things to share. And so I had that gentle, firm, maternal push to I had a book on my that I was publishing on fraud warning signals, and I was really scared about bringing it out because people would find out what had happened, what I'd done, and how would it be received. But the book was on women's finance and how to make better decisions in finance and relationships so you don't get taken advantage of. And so that was the start of my professional speaking career. And that was thanks a lot, in large part, to Soroptimist.
And it was really start of your rebuilding phase, wasn't it? What really resonates for me in that chapter is that sense of community and belonging that you found, and how crucial that piece of the puzzle is in helping us to restore our sense of self, our sense of self-worth, our sense of well-being, and that sense of community and connection to others, and in some respects even a reminder that we're part of something bigger, that it's not just about us, because when you're in that sense of despair, it's very easy to just be consumed by what's going on for just you, when you actually connect to community and connect to others, it's a lot easier to actually almost, take the spotlight off your own worries and focus on how you can actually be of service to others.
Yes, and look, there are lies that go on in our heads, and some of them come from our past. And one thing I've learned is that everybody suffers rejection, and to some degrees worse than others. And when you have trauma, it will trigger every hang up you've got. It'll trigger the rejection from when your parents broke up when you were 3 or 5, or it just, the stuff that's been hurt inside you gets triggered and comes up, and you react accordingly when trauma happens to you. And just becoming aware of that can help you to question your own assumptions. So what helped me was knowing that my fear of rejection was common and normal, that everybody suffers it. That's why we're shy to join a club. Oh, what if they don't like me? What if they're mean? And sometimes they might be, but we have to join community anyway. We can have a sense of isolation that our fears and our rejection reinforces, so that it stops us from reaching out to connect with someone. But I did know that my mental health depended on support from others. I cannot do life on my own. It is my personality type. So when I came home, I did find I was testing out acquaintances and friends to see whether there was the potential for a good friendship there. And I was careful about it because, some people are, oh yeah, okay. But they're not really going to be friends. But when you find a group, and sporting clubs are very similar. If you join a sporting club, you will find that you'll build some really good friendships in those too. Soroptimist suited me because it was women who had a heart to serve. Now my heart, one of my coping, well, I don't know whether you'd call it a coping mechanism, but when I was in prison, your own suffering is hard, but there's also that saying that, I thought I did it tough because I had no shoes till I met someone who had no feet. You know that one? And I was in prison feeling sorry for myself, but the second I did, I would look to my left and there'd be someone who couldn't read or write. I'd look to my right and there'd be another woman who was glad to be in prison because she was getting belted up every day at home. I'm like, who lives like this? Who lives like this? And
people do. People do, yeah.
And it turned my heart inside out. And being a rescuer as well, I tried to save everybody. But, Soroptimist gives me an outlet for rescuing people. But really, it's about giving back and taking your eyes off yourself. Like, your pain is legitimate. Your pain, and you do need to grieve the losses that you have. But there comes a point, and we talked about this earlier today, where it's okay to grieve losing material things. But what you have to come back to is that they are material things and human life is the priority. You have your health. I mean, people who have bad health will give up every material thing to get the health back.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's about putting that in perspective, isn't it?
It is.
And,
it is. Without dismissing the pain.
That's right. And I guess this is the interesting part about the topic of mental health. And I guess with Mental Health Week and the theme this year being take time to talk about it, there's an element of normalizing that and, recognizing the need to actually call it out and to name certain things and to find a safe space with safe people. You talked about, testing friendships and actually building that genuine trust so that you can build the spaces in which you can have, the ability to talk stuff through and to sometimes even take time to talk it out with yourself, like to really be quiet and present inside of the hurt, or inside of the pain, or inside of the loss or the
Yeah.
grief, or whatever it is that is causing, the challenge or the issue of how, you're feeling at that time. It's a really important, the awareness. And I guess, when you, with that observing of self and the recognition of what's going on, that's really the first step, that awareness bit, to go, oh, actually I'm not doing okay. Or on the flip side, oh, today's a good day, I'm doing really well today. So for some people, that's actually as equally important, is that recognition of, when you're having a good day, and with that awareness, you can make those choices. You talked about choosing, to feel and think and act in certain ways, but without that awareness, you don't get to make that choice. Sometimes, the emotions or the circumstances end up just running you on autopilot.
And that's a really, really good point, because there's two sides to it. One is your feelings are real.
Yes.
It's important to acknowledge them. But what is equally, if not more important, a fundamental truth that people miss, is that you are not your feelings. We have feelings. They are not us. They are something that passes through our bodies. We can, you might have been angry at 4 o'clock, but you're not angry now.
Yeah, that's a really good point. They're transient. Yeah.
So becoming aware of, I'm feeling this, it hurts. You kind of have to be separate from it. So what?
There's an awareness thing. So my understanding of I guess some of the things that I've learned over the years around emotions is they're given to us. They always carry a message with them. So if we're feeling hurt, it's because an expectation hasn't been met in some way. So either someone else hasn't met an expectation, or we haven't met our own expectation. Likewise with anger, the message of anger is a rule or boundary has been crossed. So someone's crossed a boundary, or you've crossed your own boundary. You've broken your own rule, which is why you're angry. Guilt is about loss. Sadness is about loss, and then guilt is about, I've done something bad, and then, shame is I am bad. So there's a whole range there.
Yeah, look, there is that. The thing is, though, it's important not to blame outside forces for your emotions. Everything that happens is how we've interpreted what's happened. So if someone has disappointed us, it's because we've had this expectation, we have this, and we have this entitlement. We have that choice. There's a pause. There's a time frame of about 90 seconds when something goes on, that we can choose how to interpret what's happening. But most often, and I don't want to give too much power to emotions, because they can rule us. And if we just, and I don't believe, like, every emotion might have a message, but sometimes that message is a blooming lie. We don't believe the chatter, because if you do, you will spiral and it will end up in depression. And you have to be in charge of that. You've got to know that you have a sense of purpose, you have a sense of worth, a sense of value, and you have something to contribute. You need to know that in your knower. You need to know it in your knower. And when you know that, then you can say, you know what, this emotion, I'm feeling it, but it's lying to me, because I am not unworthy. I am not ugly. I am not someone nobody will love. I am, we've got to be in control of our mind, our will, and our emotions.
Yeah, and we've got to be also in charge of the story that we tell ourselves.
Exactly, because
I just wanted to shift to, I guess, we've talked a lot about, I guess, a lot of things, but to kind of finish the conversation, I just wanted to drill into, like, what your number one strategy, or maybe you've got a top one or two or three strategies that you use on a regular basis, on a daily basis to improve your mental health, or to snap yourself out of a negative spiral, or I guess a practical tool or tip that we can offer people for how to approach the world in the best possible way.
Yeah. So when you're starting to feel something that's not great, and usually you get a physical feeling before it becomes a cognitive thought, but the thought is actually there, you're just not aware of it, and that's why your tummy's feeling yuck and you're starting to feel. Number one thing to do is to ask, where did this come from? Hang on. Becoming aware. I'm feeling this.
Yeah.
I'm feeling restless. Now, where has this come from? And it might be that you were on Facebook half an hour earlier reading things that disturbed you. And you see, then it's starting to manifest and disturb your day. You have to, so there's that. You've got to question what's coming in and going, is that consistent with my value? Is it true? Because most of the time we just believe the thoughts that come in. Is it true? You know what? That's come from that. It's come because I'm overtired. I'm hungry. I'm lonely. I'm this or that. No, so that's not true. And what can I do? Have something pre-planned that you can do, that use your go-to, that feeds you. Now that might be good music that's healthy. It might be, for me, it might be a preaching message from someone that I really enjoy listening to, because it uplifts me. You might need to go for a run.
Yeah.
So there's that. And then there's you
have three daughters. Do you have advice that you give your daughters on a regular basis?
All the time.
Yeah, of course you do.
All the time. It's usually about their emotions and controlling their thinking. But here's an exercise. And you're from an athletic background, Fiona.
Yes. Yeah.
Just as running is more powerful than walking, you would agree.
Yep.
Yep. It's fair. So too, a spoken word is more powerful than a thought.
Yes.
So when you have a thought that says, you just look so ugly today, who's going to love you? Or something, that you're no good, you'll never get this, you're dumb. You have that thought come in, you got to arrest it and say, actually, I may have felt that way, but in fact, I am worthy of love because I am valuable. And, you have an answer for that, but you speak it out loud. And you speak out loud the things that are truthful. My husband loves me. He's a good man. He's a good provider. Because he might have just forgotten to give you a kiss goodbye in the morning, and you're like, oh, he doesn't love me. And you're telling yourself this whole story. It's like, no, what is the truth for me? Now, people say the truth is whatever you feel like it is. No, because there are lies that go on in our head.
Yeah.
Now they can feel true, and you can make them come true.
Yep.
But we have a lot more personal power than what we think. So you have to control. Here's the other thing: is control your mental ecosystem. What's going on in your world that is feeding that negativity? Sometimes you might need to distance yourself from a friendship.
Yes.
Sometimes you might need to have a conversation. I've had to say to someone close to me, you know what, I know that you're hurting. I know that you lost money, but I just can't have this conversation again, because it makes me want to just dig a hole and fall in it and cover myself up. And they're like, oh, they hadn't thought about how it was affecting me. They just wanted to vent, because when they saw me, they were reminded of their loss.
Yes.
And I thought, if my being here reminds you of your loss, if you can't not talk about it, we really can't spend time together. And she hadn't thought about that. And she needed to arrest her thinking.
Yeah.
And stop going over. Because when you go over and over and over in something, you hardwire those pathways.
Yeah.
And you got to rewire them.
Yeah.
So,
that's actually a really beautiful one to finish on, in terms of, being able to interrupt the pattern, and rewire for what you want rather than what you don't want. And, and be able to obviously take control of your, not only your mental state, but ultimately your life and how you want to be out there in the world. So thank you so much for sharing your time and your story with us, Trish. I really appreciate it. And yeah, thank you. Just thank you. It was very enlightening and really, really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. You make it all worthwhile.